You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the April 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Long Beach Budget and Finance Committee. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Welcome to the Budget and Finance meeting, which is more turning into our workshop on the capital plan. So, roll call, J.D. Haley. Here. Nita Remages. Here. Laurel Kaczynski. Here. Claire Collins, I'm here. Joe Jagman. Here. Chief Swistek. Here. And we also have our accountant, Trista Hudson. Everybody should have their capital plan in front of them. And then Trista, do we have a plan for the best way to tackle this?
What I would like to point out, and I'm sorry, first of all, line number 3 at the top above the black line, I should have changed the updated date to today. Meg and I were just working on this to update some of the updates I'm going to explain to you. Unfortunately, 329 is the copy you would have gotten in the email. And so I want to point that out in case you would like to change that so that there's no confusion later. I do expect after today's conversation, some additional edits will be made to the actual expenditures column for 2024. And I will ensure that that updated date is changed so that, again, you can keep track of the most current copy. So what I'd like to do first is point out why this is different from the one in your email, and then that will springboard us into the further conversation. I believe that we have, though, some department heads here as well to talk about some of the items, and so we do want to make sure we spend some time today in hearing from them, seeing where those projects fit into this list, so that you all have a real good understanding of the projects that have been planned and discussed so far, which will then make your informed decisions better in the future. So first of all, then, if we could look at that actual expenditures 2024 column, which is in the left half, it's that first column right next to the description of the projects. And halfway down, you see the stormwater department. You'll see the number next to stop 1718 improvement as $16,621. So in looking through with Meg this morning, some expenditures that have already happened in this year of 2024, there were 2 different bills that have been spent out of the stormwater fund toward this listed project, the stop 1718. Those bills were $13,666 and then just shy of $3,000. So that's how we get to the $16,000. What you'll note then is in the column immediately to the right, there's now a value of $333,000. That started the morning today. Your copy in your email said $350,000. So my intention is, and my suggestion, unless you prefer something different, is that as we add actual expenditures, the projected line will reduce. Even though the full 350 is what was projected, I want you to be able to see what's remaining in the original plan, which will then inform at the bottom, do we still have enough revenue to cover everything? If you would prefer to keep the original projected 24 column and then a subtotal column next to it, we can do that too. I just only had so much room on the paper. So that's how we'll read it going forward unless you decide you want to see otherwise. As we move down then in the actual expenditures this year, the next value you come to is $12,816 in the town tech sub area. Those were for the security cameras that had been spent already. I wanted to put a strike through font on security cameras so that you knew what the $12,000 had been spent on. But the way that I have this Excel workbook linked, it wouldn't let me do that. So I don't like that because, it doesn't give you then in one snapshot exactly what's happened. So I would suggest if you wanted to strike through security camera, you know that that's been spent, and we'll figure out a better way going forward so that you can see right away. What that did then is reduce the 30,000 that was listed in the projection to the immediate right of that down to 17. So 17 is what would be left in the original plan for potentially air conditioning and potential plumbing issues here in town hall. We added then a line for the new printer immediately below that at the 5,200. You'll see that the right side of that is blank. This printer was not in the original capital plan coming into this year, but it was something that council decided was important to do. And so we need to show it here. That would be a capital type item. That would be something that in the future we would try to plan ahead for, to say, okay, the printer is starting to get to its end of useful life. We should plan for it in the following year, for example. But I didn't want to include that in the projection, again, because that wasn't in the original plan. Then as you go to the very bottom of the page, the 10,858 is some communication expenses happened over in the fire building, public safety building. That would reduce the 321,000 number that was in the projection as the expense. So unfortunately, adding in that printer line kicked our total capital expense costs on the top of page 2. I would have preferred to keep it all on one piece of paper, but we'll have to figure out a little bit different way to format maybe so that you can see everything in a collective location. Point being, total capital projects that we listed here today so far is 28,874. There are a few more things that I think Meg and I can add to the list, such as police car lease. And so this isn't, I don't feel like this column is completely finished yet for today. And we'll be working on that later this afternoon when we're finished with the meeting. I'm sorry that some things took longer this morning than I first had planned. But we will absolutely get that updated and keep you informed and have it available to you before Monday, hopefully sometime tomorrow, so that you can see that before the council meeting is coming. In the colorful section then, again, is the revenues. We've looked at those before. I just want to point out that as we have then used some of the money for the expenditures, you now see that in the actual column as well. So the printer, for example, the 5,200 came out of the CDIP budget. The CDIP is a fund, economic development income tax, that is kind of a variable. I'm missing the word that I want. It is a fund that can be used on multiple things, as opposed to the stormwater fees, which have to be strictly used on a stormwater project. So CDIP is more of a catch-all. You see the stormwater expenses listed then, the matches the 16,621. The 10,000 for the public safety fire communication equipment came out of the ARP fund. And then the security cameras were paid for from the riverboat fund. As we continue to expend more money, this revenue area will not be so distinct because we're going to have multiple expenses paid from the same fund. I would like some input from you as a committee if you want to be able to distinguish that or not in this revenue section. Again, because the CDIP fund, the riverboat fund, the CCD fund, and then the general, although the general is small in revenue, those can be used on a variety of things. And so in the future, when you look at the revenue come July or August, you won't necessarily automatically know which fund paid for which item. I don't know that that's super important for your future decisions, because you will see what money is left remaining available. But give it some thought and let me know if for some reason you would want those lines expanded. What we see then at the very bottom of our listing is that for the 2024 plan, there are still $32,939 in revenue over the planned expenses. So as far as having some leeway, that's the amount that you would be at as it relates to the planned things that are listed here. Again, just a quick reminder, the blue highlighting is because those revenues tie back specifically to the funds listed on the front. Water can only be spent on water. But in the same regard, I probably should have highlighted stormwater in a different color so that you would see that had to be specifically assigned, but I didn't want this to become a coloring book either, so you can let me know if you prefer certain formatting. So I know that we want to come back and have more conversation about some of what's listed, where some of the money can go to be assigned. I know there's some specific projects coming with CCMG and things, but I would like to take some time to hear from your department heads to explain what some of these are, so that we make sure that we're all fully informed. And Mike, I don't know if you, or Mark, I'm sorry, if you were planning to lead some of that or turning it over, so I'll be quiet for a minute.
Thank you, Trista. I'd like to start with the water department. It's probably going to be our easiest one. I took the opportunity over the last several days to meet with both superintendents from the water department and the street department. So we'll start with the water department. In 2024, you see we have $700,000 set aside. That will be finishing up the water improvement project for Lakeshore Drive. That contract was awarded at about $699,000. So we'll be finalizing those invoices and that will be closed out this year. When we then move down from there, we have a $70,000 backup generator. That is still a priority for the water department. However, as we continue today's discussions and speaking to Superintendent Parrish, Greg said that, you know, he could bump it into next year if need be, but no later than next year. So, you know, we'd love to do it in 2024 still. Worst case scenario, 2025. And that pretty much closes out this year. Looking at projections for 2025, we have $200,000 that's set aside in there. And then when we go to the explanation on that, there was Oriole and Ridgemore. We were going to do some anticipated work up there at about $200,000. And speaking to Greg, we can, you know, postpone that as well. And we can use that as a future project for a water improvement project, utilizing the funds that come into the water department. What Greg would like to do is we'd like to recoup from this last major project and begin to build some reserves and move this $200,000 project out into 26 or even 27 farther out. So for now, we don't need that in 2025.
200 is still a valid number at that point.
It's hard to say. I would say probably not. You would be about that much further.
Because I'd rather increase it to 230 or something in the future, considering potential inflation, so that we can try to keep a solid plan. Of course, the further away we get from real time, the more variable the numbers become, but at least I'd rather conservatively, although this sounds backwards, conservatively plan, meaning 230 and have it come in at 220,
Right.
then list it at 200 and have it come in at 250.
Right.
So
Probably do 250 engineering. Yeah, engineering and everything, I would say 250 would be a more comfortable number.
Right, I think so.
And then the valve exercise machine in 2025, $45,000. We no longer need that. And speaking to Greg, we have other ways of exercising the larger valves that we have in the system. So we could take that off totally. We were working on cost saving measures. 2026, we want to leave the pickup truck in there in 2026.
Yeah.
At 65,000. And then the 4 inline easy valves along Oriole. Speaking to Greg, he believes he can handle that within their normal operating budget. If nothing else, a couple of those valves 1 year, and then,
Yeah, we can break them down. They don't have to be done all of them right now, so.
so we can actually take that out of the capital plan and save another $65,000 there. And then the tank painting in 2027, we're actually gonna have an inspection coming up here soon, and then the tank painting itself. Greg, what do you think? You wanna stay with the 150 on that one?
You know, what we need to do is, I think, it's either 26 or 27, we're due for the big inspection from Dixon that comes in and they go over everything with the tank. That's kind of why I'm kind of backing up on some of the other things, because if we have some integrity problems with that tank, you know, there's gonna be some expense there, so, but I don't know what those could be. Maybe we won't have any, hopefully we don't, but we're having an inspection this April 30th. They're gonna flush the inside of the tank out, and then they'll give us a report on the interior of the tank. That was just epoxied about 5 years ago. It's supposed to last for 10, but they'll give us a report on that. Hopefully that's all in good shape. And then from there, we jump to 27, I believe it is. They come in again and they do their full analysis on everything, rivets, bolts, everything. And then we'll get a report then, and then we'll know what our projected costs will be to get the tank back to where it needs to be, if there are any issues.
Well, we wanna paint, the bolts and all that probably need to be done before we paint, correct?
Well, what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll look at everything, and then they'll give us a report, and then they'll tell us they'll give us recommendations on what we need to do. As far as painting the tank, we just had that painted like about 6 years ago. Typically, we do it about every 10 to 12, just depends on how it's holding up. But that was before. Now we're using Dixon as our engineers. I follow their recommendations. So if they make a recommendation of painting them, that's when we'll do it. I think it's gonna need to be sandblasted though this time. It's never been sandblasted. So, you know, you've got layers of paint, you know, so there could be lead-based paint in there, you know, from years and eons ago. So they're gonna wanna probably close that whole thing off and sandblast it all out and start from bare metal.
What do you think about for tank painting and maintenance? We put in like $200,000 from go a little higher, 250.
I would say go a little higher, go 250, and then hopefully we don't need it.
We'll set it in 27, maybe push it to
Maybe
28.
28, yeah, let's see. I talked to Todd Schaefer, he's our representative from Dixon, and their inspections, like I think he said, was gonna be 2027 for the big one. So then we'll know what we need to do after that, so it could probably fall in 2028, probably. Unless they see something structurally that'll be up to that repair we might need to do, you know, right away or something, but.
Aside from that, again, the generator takes precedence over everything, on Moore Road there. Everything else, and speaking to Greg, he and Austin both feel that a lot of their day-to-day needs can be met, on their normal, operating budget. So unless there's any questions for Greg or I think pretty much Water Department did an excellent job of trying to cut back on some cost saving for us. No, that would be Tom on this one.
So why would the tank have to be sanded? I mean, is there something with leach inside it? Is that, or I'm just curious?
No, what it is, years ago, in tanks, they used to use a wax, it's actual wax, it's put inside the tank, so it would grow. A lot of that minerals in it. So now they're using epoxy. they go and they scrape everything down, the sandblast to the inside of our tank, and we put some epoxy. And this epoxy is supposed to last 10 years. It's basically in there just for corrosion.
So it's not the outside, it's the inside that has to be read, okay, that's right up like the outside, okay,
Well, no, this should have since
Okay.
5 years now, so.
okay, thank you.
It's supposed to last about 10.
Thanks, Brad.
Good?
Well, I think Anita, maybe a little confusion, the sandblasting though is for the outside of the tank is painting, right?
Well, no, they sandblast the inside, we kind of,
So it adheres to the metal, they always sandblast the inside. The outside would also be sandblasted, get the old paint off.
Okay, so
So it's two different. Yeah. Two different applications.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Any questions on water before we move to street department? All right, street department, same thing. Superintendent Dolph did a great job looking at his 5-year plan. We also, when Tom was provided the 5-year plan, I'd like to compliment him because he looks at years 2025 and 2027. You'll see in parentheses, there were some deficits there. There were 6-figure deficits. So Tom took a great look at what he has to work with, and we think we came up with a plan that will save on some of our larger purchases, that being our large snowplow trucks. Tom is proposing that in 2024, we'll start with the truck that's currently listed for $150,000. I have with me today, the last quote we received was $136,032. But this was for a truck that was on the lot. If we have to order, obviously this quote is going to be a little bit higher. It could be closer to the 150. We would like to keep the replacement for the F550 truck on for 2024. The reason for that is that we have 2 larger trucks that cost in upwards of $350,000 or more that we use for plowing our streets. Tom feels that we can downsize those trucks to the smaller version, and by buying this F550 gives us the opportunity to try this on our roadways with the already 550 that we have, and will reduce a lot of our expenses, the cost of replacing equipment in the future and that. So I'll get to where we're going to move some of the trucks around after 2024. So in 2024, we want to leave the 150,000 for the F550 on there. We would like to move into 2024, if we can swing for it, the salt barn replacement. Salt barn replacement is currently in 2025. We would like to move that over to this year. We have 2 contractors that'll be coming out in the next 4 to 6 weeks to give us quotes on the salt barn. Part of the problem is we currently have a salt order sitting at Cargill that if we do not take delivery on the salt that we're under contract with, we could pay an upwards of $10,000 this year just to store that salt. That means that's $10,000 for storage. We don't get any salt for that. It's simply 10,000 storage fee. However, if we can address our salt barn this year, and let's say it's 100 to 120,000, if we can get this completed before a lot of this storage occurs, that could be 10,000 in storage that could go towards the potential purchase of this barn this year. So that's one of the thoughts that we have, or Tom's looking at alternatives to try and get some of this salt stored at our current location. So we'd like to move the 120 over to 2024. So then we have the truck and the salt barn, CCMG for 2024. There is a proposal that will be discussed at the council meeting on Monday for a large CCMG project that we would like to get submitted by the August deadline. Once approved, hopefully by the state, we would receive approval, we would not pave until spring of 2025. So no CCMG would be going out this year except for the engineering cost. I estimated after speaking with Tom on the engineering, we want to set aside about $50,000 this year for engineering. That will cover some of the application cost for Haas to finalize the application for submittal to the state. That will also cover the Pacer update that we have to do annually. That would be figured in that amount as well. I sent everybody an email this morning from Haas kind of outlining those two items on there. And then you'll also see on that Haas says also the town would then receive a proposal for the final design, bidding, and construction services after the grant was awarded. Tom, question for you. Maybe that 50,000, Tom, I'm thinking may not be enough because we may have to add another 15 to 20 just for this bidding and construction services early on, because we're gonna have to add something for the bidding in there. Because if we're awarded the grant, then the bidding's gonna have to occur. We're gonna have to pay Haas for that as well. So maybe we should increase that to 75, maybe just to be safe.
Yeah.
75,000 instead of 50 then. And then obviously all that will go towards the engineering, the bid work, construction services. Then if awarded CCMG in 2025, we would need approximately, with the town's match and engineering figured in there, $650,000 in 2025. So if you look at 2024, 2025, the two combined, we'd have 850,000 for CCMG. We're estimating we would need 650, but not until 2025, because construction would commence in April, at the earliest of 2025. And then we would have to be expending funds probably in May or June of 2025 for CCMG. And then that 650 would cover engineering, construction management, and the town's match. That would be for us applying for 1.775 in construction cost. So, and then they anticipated the town's share at 443,813. But then I added in the engineering and construction oversight, and that takes that 443 and upwards of 650. Obviously, it could come in less than 650, but I just wanted to be on the high side.
JD, would you mind passing down the extra microphone? It would be easier.
Hey, Mark,
The far
keep in mind, there's about 150 that can be paid out of the storm in 2020.
Yeah, out of the stormwater fund?
Out of that 630, about 150 or so can be paid out of storm.
Correct.
A little more close this year.
Except when we get to stormwater, we're gonna talk about how stormwater is gonna be depleted for this year to cover the 17-18 project, but we'll start building $250,000 a year going into next year that we could utilize some of that revenue to cover some of that, correct?
All on stormwater. Then 500, you got the yellow, Chris.
Sure, for John, and Mike.
I'm trying, I don't want to complicate your lives here, but you got 500,000 in yellow. What's that for?
And we would come to that, but the yellow is because that 500 was listed there if we did not get to it in 2024. So I expect during this conversation today, that's probably gonna be deleted.
Yes.
So Mark, my question though about the CCMG for 2024, aren't there still some current expenses for maybe 22 or something that are still owed?
There were some engineering costs that have been rolling in. We have the one contract for 19,950, I believe it was St. Lawrence. And then, we also did the coring on, St. Lawrence, 3,600, I think that was. Meg has those bills already.
Right.
So,
St. Lawrence,
So-
not in these numbers,
So that's,
in the CCMG numbers. The ultimate cost of the project is not in the CC. Your 20,000 engineering,
that's good.
your 20,000 engineering gets you to the point where they're designing the project for you. You gotta pay for the project. That's not on here.
No, and then there's more engineering work for St. Lawrence that needs to be done, that needs to be figured into that too, is what Sam told me today. So, yeah, so that's why I added that cost line.
That's some of what I'm asking about. I'm sorry, I don't know the project name.
Sure.
I thought that for streets, for this year 24 for CCMG, we still need some money. We've just talked about taking most of it out.
Just for engineering and that, there'll be no paving this year in 2024. It'll all
But don't-
be engineering, design, the work that they are doing to prepare for the application to the state.
Okay, so don't we still have though a 2022 CCMG project award that isn't finished yet?
No, that is this email here. That was the one that they had started. It was shelved in 2022. They've taken it off the shelf. They've looked at it. That's part of the 13 subdivisions included in this 1.775.
Okay, I'm sorry if I missed that along the way.
No,
Okay,
no, great
so
question.
on the Haas invoice that Megan and I looked at earlier today, that,
That went to paving, Trista, in CCD, remember the 30,000?
right, okay,
300's been paid, 10,440's on Monday's agenda.
okay, and so we didn't get that into the actual expenditure list yet, but that's where I saw the invoice from. So that 22 application then was paused
It was paused.
and is now rolled into 24.
Yes, and a lot of costs for the engineering and everything was spent on that project, Tom will recall. It was never submitted for, but there's still a little bit of engineering on that from what Sam told me. More engineering on St. Lawrence and then very little on Floormont's dead end extension. There needs to be some engineering on that too. And that's on that number of the 650 that we rolled in for 2025. Now, for 2024, the $75,000 that we're saying to assign to CCMG would be to cover the invoices that Meg is referring to and any additional work that Haas is going to send us a bill for if the council approves on Monday to move forward with submittal to the state for the grant. Haas is going to have some invoices coming in for that. That would be that 75,000 for this year that we're saying.
So from the 2022, did we receive the 75% from the state toward those projects?
No.
Okay, so we have no money to return to that?
No, none whatsoever. That was never submitted to the state.
Okay,
But make sure that whatever accounting you did for that old project, the second fall 2022 that we did in 23, that you zero that out and make sure that you've gone back to them if there were surplus funds. You know about that, right?
well, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
This got nothing to do with this big project.
Right, I get it.
The project that we did, that we built in 23, which was a smaller just paving project. The state gives you X number of dollars. If you spend X minus something, you have to give them back that money and you have to do it on the time frame that they dictate.
We did that already. That's,
I hope we did.
You closed it out?
You sure not?
Right, because that was at the end, we had to send them a
Yes.
copy of the check that we
Yes.
sent them.
and Sam verified it as well, on that one.
Okay, okay, great.
I'll double check as well, but yes.
Well, I'll just.
No, I know.
Okay.
But no, to Trista's point that there's no match or nothing hanging out there, any expenses. So if we were to put in 75,000 this year for CCMG, primarily for engineering, no paving this year. And then for 2025, we want to pencil in 650,000 for CCMG. And that's for the big project. Now, Haas did indicate to us that the state has raised the CCMG to $1.5 million match. And this submittal that will be hopefully getting approval on Monday for is probably going to end, and next year they're probably going to go back to $1 million. So they're going to reduce the grant funds starting next year. Sam just recently attended a workshop and he says that they anticipate next year returning to the $1 million. So they're encouraging us to take advantage of, the larger grant match at this point. And then, so that'll be the one in front of the council for Monday. hopefully by Monday, between Meg's office and Trista, we can have an idea to the council that, we can swing for that one.
And if we authorize them to apply for this on that second call this year, then you have to understand that you're committing to that big number. You're not just committing to the engineering, because once they submit that, the state's gonna go through the process. If they award it, which is likely, then you're committed for that 650.
And we have
Not just the engineering that you're committing for.
And we have 18 months to complete the project. So that's why we're saying if we get awarded this fall, we would not start construction this fall, because as Tom and I discussed, they've got to order some dry wells, a bunch of other stormwater infrastructure. The 1.775 project that's out there has a lot of stormwater tied to it as well. That'll help with some of the flooding issues in some of the neighborhoods in that, where water's gathering at intersections. So that's why Tom's saying it's gonna take time for them to get the materials and everything. And then spring of 2025, we would start paving on that project. And there would be 13 different divisions or roadways in the town that would be addressed during that large project.
So on the piece of paper then, in 2025, we can cross out the 500 number for stormwater, and that becomes the 650. Kind of carried over but joined. Okay. All right, very good. And then we think still, another 500 in 2026?
Yes. Okay. And then we have a security gate for 30,000 in 2026. We'd like to keep that on there. We need to go back to 2025. So 2025, there is a $350,000 expenditure on there. This was the area that, Tom suggested that we push that 350,000 into 2026. So that'll take you out of a negative for 2025. We anticipate, once we get this other 550 truck, that we may not need that large truck for 350,000, that in 2026, Tom could purchase another F-550 for 175 to 200,000, let's say, much less than the 350, saving the town $150,000. So that 350 can be moved to 2026. Then in 2026, we'll leave the security gate on there. You have the CCMG. 2027, we still feel strongly we should have CCMG on 2027 as well. We have none on there currently. So we'd add 500 there. Same thing in 2027, you have 375,000 for another truck. Move that truck to 2028. And we're hoping to get that again for under 200,000. But we just want to push that far enough out. And then speaking to Tom, the trucks will kind of be on the even year replacement basis. So like if we were to get one this year in 2024, get another one in 2026, and another one in 2028.
How many do you have total?
Total trucks,
Yeah.
4. 4 of the large ones.
So that makes them about 8-year lifespan then? Is that about what you get, or?
We used to stay on like the 10-year for the big trucks, but.
Does the hilly nature of the town cause more wear and tear than you might have on a flat?
Well, things have changed as far as work scope and what we do now, compared to, 20 years ago or beyond. We'll go back 30 years when I first started. We used to lay water main, so that was spring, summer, and then towards fall, we would be closing the line up. We would be doing the, service line, the taps, everything else, but that has changed, since the water main project that was done in 2009, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that. So we're not laying water main. We're not utilizing those big trucks the way that we used to before. They used to be continuously running through, all year. Not only that, we're not doing the drainage work anymore because instead of the town funding and putting out the money for the drainage work, we're using and utilizing the CCMG project which pays 75% of the drainage. So we're not doing that anymore, and we're letting the community crossing, grant process take care of that stuff, so. Basically what we're doing with those trucks now is we're plowing snow, and, most of the time in between, they're out, we take them out, run them every once in a while in the spring, summer, and fall, but they're there basically just waiting for snow again. And this year, we had hardly nothing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. But at the same time, because we are not, and I hope that I'm correct with this, that we are not hauling the amount of material of what we used to, is that if we downsize, maybe them trucks aren't really necessary to have such large trucks anymore. So that's the idea. So if we can go with, which maintenance itself we wouldn't be, I was telling Mark this morning, if the transmission happens to go out on one of them big trucks, it's $40,000-$50,000. It's not the $4,000 or $5,000 one like, transmission goes out on that 550, that's 12,000 instead of 40,000. So it's just things like that. And as far as, being versatile and being able to get around town, when we have people, when they see them trucks coming, the big trucks coming down the road, they make it. I know that we got total control over that truck at all times, but it makes it a little, sketchy when somebody decides that they see that truck and they slam on brakes and they sit there on the side of the road. Keep going. But, it's just, the versatility of the newer trucks or the smaller truck and everything else. It just seems like, and Austin is the one that usually uses that 550 anyway. But, he can cover just as much area, if not faster, using that smaller truck than what we are with the big truck. So if we find out that at a time that, and I feel like this year would be the year for that, to be able to try this out before we get into chucking out that 350,000 for a big truck. We may be able to eliminate both of those and then, keep one of those since they're already bought, paid for and everything, just in case we happen to need it. But, so I don't know, but that's the thoughts right now because of the way the whole scope and everything that we're doing is just totally different now than years ago.
The only other thing on here, 2027, the 111,000 for the street sweeper, bump that to 150 just to be safe. We just want to, Tom and I discussed this as well. Our street sweeper is important to us, but again, it's one of those things in 2027 we can look at it. And the closer we get to that, we can get a more firm number as well. But otherwise, the CCMG was the majority of the street projects. As we discussed earlier, we had a lot of engineering this year, getting ready for next year's big paving project, which will address a lot of the, what would you say, Tom, the eastern portion of the town, I guess, more or less, where a lot of this paving's at, but then there'll be St. Lawrence as well.
Yeah.
Reconstructing that road. Any questions on anything related to streets, CCMG, before we move to stormwater?
If the overall state grant is going to drop back to $1 million in 26, are we thinking we still need to plan for a full 500?
Well, you have 250,000 is our portion of match, and then you got to figure in the engineering cost. And the engineering typically is a good 15 to 20% of the project.
Okay.
So that could be upwards of $150,000 to $200,000.
Okay.
So if we
The
do,
other thing that's gonna happen, because we're finishing up a lot of stormwater, you're gonna just be doing paving, so you won't get help from the stormwater fund on these future projects. If we do Lakeshore Drive over to 26 or 7, that's gonna be a lot less percentage of stormwater, there'll be some. But
and that, I think Lake Show Drive, is probably gonna have a little bit more in engineering, I think, as well, because we talked about looking at the overall structure of that road with Haas, during one of our recent meetings. So we may have to do some coring out there as well on Lakeshore Drive, and then Lakeshore Drive, could become that, 2026, 2027. You know, it may take us 2 years to do all Lakeshore Drive. We may pave Lakeshore from 16 to 22, and then 22 to 31 the next year. You know, because then we can utilize the grant funds and then kind of spread it out so the town's not having to absorb all the expenditures in 1 year to address Lakeshore. And my recommendation would be we start from the west of Lakeshore because of all the construction we've been doing. Our roads on Lakeshore between 16 and 18 right now, really showing some wear. And then 22 to 31 isn't as bad, it needs to be paved, but you know, it could hold out to 2027.
I had a,
Do you want to throw St. Lawrence in here somewhere then for like 100? You don't have that in here.
For the engineering part?
No, you got the engineering in there already. The fact you signed the contract for the engineering already, but do you want to throw the project in here somewhere?
I thought it's on,
It's in.
it's in the OCP. Yeah, it's in that, it's part of that 1.775.
so this is just a small issue with that security gate. So every now and then I see cars pulling out of there and I don't know if there's ever a problem back there, maybe with the dumpster. I think a couple of years ago, people were going and I don't want to be chasing cars down Chastleton. Like, hey, who are you? So I don't know if, you know, if you guys park your cars, your trucks back there and then change out for the town trucks. And I just don't know that, you know, if that's an issue and it's a relatively small, sum.
We could look at
A security gate, but I just was curious about that.
2 points. The dumpster, Tom's been putting locks on some of those dumpsters back there to address that. We no longer have the open bed dumpster any longer. We now have lids on back there. The security gate, we could eventually maybe take it off the capital plan if we were, for instance, this year, fall of this year, if we see there's enough remaining in Tom's building and maintenance and grounds funds in his general operating budget, we could begin the security gate project this fall and then finish it into 2025 with some of his general operating budget as well. So we could do that, possibly, but it's one of those things we want to get through 3/4 of this year to see before we even, you know, attempt to do it. Just like Greg's doing. Greg's trying to address some of the bigger projects within his own operating budget rather than making them capital plans. But no, good point. We'll look at it. We would like to do it sooner than later. Anything else on CCMG streets before we move to stormwater? All right, stormwater, we have a pending invoice out there with Woodruff site. That contract was like 440,000. 450, yeah.
It's going down, you got a cheaper structure, that's the 10 comes off.
Yeah.
Like 430, somebody's coming in cheaper or.
So I anticipated 450,000, I just threw out there to cover it all, but hopefully it comes in 440 or whatever. So this year, we're gonna have a $450,000 expenditure. It's pretty much gonna exhaust the stormwater fund for this year to cover, that project that was approved by the council that is near completion currently.
Okay, so is that 1718?
That's 1718, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So that's 1718, but then when you look at what you had sent out today in stormwater, you already have 16,621 on there. I believe that's for some of the engineering, from Haas and that.
Right.
So that number is not included in that 450 number I just gave you. The 450, and like John Wall said, it could come in around 440, whatever. That's gonna go straight to Woodruff's to cover all the work that was just completed on stop 1718. So we need to figure,
So-
that large invoice coming in this year.
And the 16 doesn't apply for that. But this is all stop 1718?
It's all stop 1718. Yep.
Tristan, I was incorrect saying that what Mark was asking me about was related to CCMG. It's clearly not. It's related to this, the stormwater.
Well, there was an invoice.
Talking.
There's an invoice from Haas that is related to CCMG. That's part of that 19,900 something contract the council recently approved. But then there's also construction, oversight for the Stop 1718 project that we have.
We don't see that invoice yet.
No, there's one that just came in from Haas.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one for the water project, there's one for the stormwater, and then there was the St. Lawrence one too. There was like 3 Haas invoices that just came in.
Okay,
I
so,
look two, so
I'm almost positive.
CCMG St. Lawrence is 10,440, and then it's a smaller one,
Yeah.
like under 2,000.
Yeah, that was for the stormwater.
Yeah.
There was one like
There's
for,
21,904
Yeah.
for the 1718.
the storm, or the water improvement one was like $1,200 or something like that. It just came in.
Yeah.
okay, so I'm sorry. Let me catch back up again. The 16,600 that we have listed.
Mhm.
That Meg and I added today as a 24 actual.
Okay,
The invoices said 1718.
correct, that is correct.
Okay,
Yep,
but you're saying on top of that is 450 coming in for Woodruff.
straight to Woodrow's, yep,
Okay,
which we're hoping to be 440 or so, but that's yet to be determined.
all right, but for 2024, we don't need the 150 reserved out of stormwater to join with CCMG then?
No,
Okay. So ultimately, the total plan is still okay.
speaking of 500,
Meaning, we don't need the 150 listed in stormwater for 24. We can drop that plan down. So we're still covered, in total, we're still covered for Woodruff for 1718.
correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
And then, as John Wall indicated too, in 2025, any built-up revenue in stormwater in 2025 could be utilized as expenditures towards your CCMG for 2025. Because there's going to be quite a bit of stormwater work done as part of the 2025 paving project. There's a lot of dry wells that are going in and some other lines that are being ran in that big project.
So committee, that yellow, then the 500 in yellow for 25 can be deleted because we will finish that here in 24. It was yellow because it was just a holdover in case it didn't get done. So that would come off entirely then, and in the capital plan in total then, as we see how things start to shake out, we could assign a value, as Mark just mentioned, for some extra going towards CCMG. We could come back up and put a value in that once we see where the rest of it levels.
And by June 1st, you'll have closeout on your water improvement project on Lakeshore Drive, closeout on 17 and 18 project. All those invoices will be in. And hopefully by June 1st, the majority of the public safety building invoices will be in as well. So, yeah.
And then stormwater in the future,
We want to, obviously, every year thereafter, we don't anticipate in 2026. Tom, thoughts? I know we didn't get into great details for you. At 230 in 2026, 120 and 120 in 27, 28. What do you think in 2026, Tom? We could probably drop that down to 120 as well. I know we talked about some of those small areas addressing in that.
Right, until we look at, because it's been a while because of this 1.75 million project or whatever, so it's been a while since going through and looking at all the streets and everything else, again, what's left, what needs drainage and everything else. Before I actually say that dropping that down would be a good, or okay kind of thing.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that until we review that plan again and see how it goes. I mean, this all goes depending on how the current project that we have put together, the council decides that they're gonna do the whole thing funded on everything. And if something comes up that they couldn't, or they didn't want to, then we would have to revise that plan again. So, which would throw all those numbers up.
And just to add, the one that's coming up before the council on Monday, just this week, off of Roslyn, we had a resident reach out to us, and the road's in pretty bad shape there. And they were inquiring how soon we're gonna get this paved and that, and we assured them it's on the future paving list. So, we're gonna strongly encourage with your advice that we try and, go for this, 1.775 project, because it does address, 13 major areas in the town, and going for that grant funding while it's still at the 1.5 match, possibly recommending we take advantage of it. So yeah, so I would say stormwater, leave those 26, 7, and 8 as is. And then, that pretty much wraps up stormwater, unless anybody has any questions on stormwater. And again, that just for the council's knowledge, that fund accumulates roughly about $225,000 a year that comes in revenue from, the town residents and that. So we accumulate about $225,000 a year in that fund. And that's what we've been using, like for the Stop 1718 project, that was just completed. Those funds are utilized, for that particular work, because that's all that revenue can be used for. So.
Quick side note on that, in this year's budget, there's about 68,000 that's reserved for some operational things. I'm a sport coordinator, consulting engineer as it relates to some stormwater things. And a little bit of a share towards some fuel, garage supplies, repairs. And Tom, some of that is new this year in the 2024 budget. So keep an eye on what's allotted for you there, as well as the clerical assistant out of water to help cover some of that extra cost of collecting the bills and things. So, not all of the full 225 is reserved just in capital.
Yeah, I think the clerical assistance, your clerical assistance is honor that's in there. For they're dealing with like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, right, sorry. Mhm.
And I know we threw a lot at you guys now, but I think when Trista gets a chance to finalize a lot of this, you'll see that we're not too far off from our projections and that.
Yeah, no, so far this looks good.
And by reducing some of the things, again, thanking Tom for, looking out for the best interests of the town in the future that, getting back to that 550 truck, those trucks are 4-wheel drive. The large trucks are only 2-wheel drive. So Tom's thoughts are smaller trucks with 4-wheel drive, how we maneuver through the neighborhoods. We get through our narrow streets much easier in that. So that's why we strongly believe in getting that other 550 this year. Just like we talked about, it could be an unfortunate accident into the side of one of our trucks, taking out the hydraulics and everything on one of our snowplow trucks. We wouldn't see it for the entire winter. It would be in the shop and we would be limited. So the plan is to keep the 2012 F550 we have now. That'll move down to our reserve plow truck. We'll have the new 550, and then Tom's old blue F150 would just eventually be public bid. We would get rid of that truck. So, and then, we'll regain a few thousand on that one.
Chief, and is it policy that when we acquire a vehicle, naturally it's from the manufacturers to the warranty, but we also extend the warranties throughout the natural life so that if we do have a large maintenance issue that it is covered, do we invest in extended warranties?
To my knowledge, we have not. Typically, the engine and transmission, the major powertrain is 65 years, 60,000 miles typically, correct? I mean, the 550s?
I'm not sure on that anymore.
Okay. We'll have to verify, but I think it is still the 5 years, 60,000 miles on the engine transmission. The 2012 trucks, like the ones we plowed this winter, none of those had extended warranties. But to the credit of our crews, like Tom was able to put new brake lines on them, handle a lot of the front end stuff with the plow and that. So we've been pretty fortunate with not having major mechanical issues with any of those big trucks. I think we said, the one large truck now has about 30-some thousand miles on it.
Yeah.
Somewhere like that. So it's got like 30-some thousand miles, and the truck is, a 2012, so 12 years old. So. Yeah, but we have not. We can look at it and get a price for you, but
Yeah,
we have to buy it.
Talking about transmission. For normal people, that's a car. not a transition, just it's worth evaluating.
Aside from that, that's all we have for streets and stormwater. So, Tom, again, thank you for all your work on this. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
So I guess we move down the list, parks. It's just, unless Joy has anything or Anita to add, I know we had the 80,000 in every year for parks.
I can tell you if it's come time to replace totally. It's come time to totally replace the tennis courts. They'll be resurfaced again this year and next year, but I think in 2026, they're going to try and tackle that as their next big project, and I'm guessing it's gonna be about $230,000. The quote we got for now was 160. I think they want to add a couple more pickleball courts along the side, and so we thought a safe number would be 250.
And then this for 2026.
2026 in the fall, 2026 they have to do it in the fall. And they have to tear out everything, fence, courts, everything to do it. So we've been putting it off for years, the park was putting it off for years and just resurfacing, but just to resurface costs, $25,000. So,
And we all know they do get used.
yes, they do.
Yeah. Next in line, you got community center. Last year during the budgeting process for 2024, we had the opportunity to meet with the committee from the community center. They gave us a list of projects that they would like to see completed. To my knowledge, there's no changes in that list. Obviously, there's some flexibility with the community center that we could if we needed to. But otherwise, I would recommend we leave that as is, unless anybody has any questions or recommendations. You're on, Joel.
Just a general question. Like I said, as Mark had mentioned, excuse me, as Mark had mentioned, I think we have a list of anywhere from 15 to 18 different projects. And the good news is they're not large financial projects, but sometimes, like for example, in the heat pumps, we're trying to get proper pricing for that and proper heat pump. And it takes time. And we have 23 heat pumps in the building, and they're all over 20 years old. And we need replacement as we go along. And I'm just wondering, like, in our capital budget here, like I said, let's say we have 18 projects, and right now we have for 2 heat pumps. And which I'm guessing we're still trying to get the right pricing, that they're about 10 apiece. Okay, now, if we don't get some other project completed or even started, is it possible that this budget is flexible, where all of a sudden we said, oh, we've got, assuming 10 is the number, we have an extra 10 for this budget. So could we do 3 heat pumps instead of 2, or where we have some ability to move within that budget?
Right, for example, if you decide that you don't want to do in 2024, $8,000 worth of exterior painting and defer that for a year, then that 8,000 would be available to use toward one of the pumps.
Okay.
So the list that you gave, is the estimate of the projects that you think were most important.
Right.
And so we have 140 plans set aside for those things. And of course, it's fluid, so, if something comes in lower or higher and you make some adjustments, really the flexibility there is for you and the board to decide, keeping in mind though that council needs to sign the contracts. So, if you contract with, sure, Lake Shore Mechanical or something, then that just needs to run through for the signatures, but, the dollar here that's reserved for you is flexible to plan as you need.
We definitely get, from the large projects, we get contracts, whatever that. So, okay.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, thank you, Joe, I'd recommend that we'll be that as is with the community center for now. If we see when you begin to finalize today's numbers, Trista, you know, we can go back and make some adjustments in there if we gotta drop it, 10,000 or something, whatever to make.
No, I think it'll be all right. I think that's a good number for them.
Town, anybody have any questions on community center? Moving on to town and technology for 2024, Trista discussed earlier with you, the security cameras, they've been replaced. That expenditure has been taken care of for this year. The only two things I have left kind of hanging out there is I have, there's a plumbing issue. That is the main water supply coming into the town hall. It's had a slow leak for some time now. It just goes into the floor drain in the police garage. I'd like to get that addressed this year. It's about $3,000 to $4,000, probably closer to $4,000 to get that replaced or just repaired. And then one of the AC units on the roof, I'd like to address that, probably, I don't know, $8,000 to $10,000. So that's still, if we did 10 there and 4 on the other, that's 14, still puts us below the 17,184 left, for the year. The server upgrade, $9,000. At this point, we don't need that. We've moved to the OneDrive. So I feel we could take that 9,000 off for now. If we need to readdress that in 2025, 2026, we'll come back to the council. But for now, let's go ahead and take that 9,000 off for that server. So that's for 2024. Moving into 2025, we have $10,000 for one of the furnaces upstairs. There's 4 furnaces that are upstairs right above us. One of them runs a lot more than the other 3, just because of the way the building's occupied. I'd like to replace probably one of those in 2025. And then each year thereafter, we added another 10,000 in, just to address, again, probably the furnaces and or air conditioning units in the building. And we've got 4 rooftop air conditioners and 4 furnaces above us, so it's 8 units that need to be addressed, and most of them are aging out probably 20+ years. So I think by leaving that 10 grand in each year, should suffice. You know, we could increase it to 20 to be safe, to address some other building issues, but typically I try and handle those with the 25,000 that we get for building and maintenance, which probably in the 2025 budget, I'm probably gonna ask to increase that from 25 to 30,000, just because we gotta start replacing carpeting and building, things like that. So I think we're good there.
And then on town, the reason the septic lighting and town resurfacing and striping, or stripping, I don't know which it is actually. Those were 3 different titles and 3 different lines from a prior year's capital plan. I think that they're not needed any longer. I just didn't want to delete it without the potential of conversation. Is any of that
Yes,
needed at all?
septic is needed. That's on was on my list to add here today. I have the septic that we need to add. And that's gonna hit this year. So I've got a telephone conference call tomorrow morning at 9 AM. They're still in the design process on that. There's discussion, we may go to standalone system for the new building out back. We may still tie into the town hall. There's still some unknowns. I just don't know where that price is gonna come in. I'd like to say it's gonna be under 100,000, close to 100,000. It could be 150,000. I don't know yet. And I won't have a better idea probably for another 30 days.
But that's town hall or that's public safety?
That's the public safety building out back.
Oh, so is there no town hall septic issue?
No, we're good with town hall.
Okay.
Town hall system is running well. We just have the pending public safety building septic system that's out in design right now.
Right,
I would put in 100 for now. If it comes in more than that, I'll let everybody know within 30 days here, but right now I would pencil in at least $100,000 to be safe. Like I said, it could be much more, I just don't know yet. Then the lighting, what were you referring to on the lighting there?
again, the rest of this line was just old, titles from previous years.
The lighting could be taken off, and then the town resurfacing and striping, that can come off, typically we pay for that out of the normal, motor vehicle highway fund.
Yeah, okay.
So. Any questions on town tech? All right, moving on to police for 2024. This year, we have a 20,000, it's just under 20,000, it's like 19,000 something, a $20,000 payment on 2 of our 2020 squad cars. So you have that 20,000, which we've been paying, and then we need an additional $4,000 on the lease for the Durango that we just received. First 6 months of that were covered by the vehicle trade-in. And then when that credit runs out, we'll have 4 payments of like $900 some each. So it'll be just under $4,000 to finish that out for the remainder of 2024. And then, Trista, I believe already our body cameras and that annual payment of like 15,000 something, you have that already budgeted in. I don't think that's part of the capital, correct?
There are several funds that have police equipment, spots. Riverboat has a little bit, Lit has a little bit, general fund has a little bit, so, again, that title was kind of a holdover. I want to make sure that we get clarified what's where.
Okay.
So if the body cam expense
16,000.
is handled elsewhere, then we take it out of this.
And we can look at the history from the pay, submittals on that, see where it's been paid for, because it was a 5-year contract. I believe we have 1 year left in that contract, so,
What's gonna happen at the end of that year, though?
That's different.
yeah.
Is that
And it's like 15,000 something.
We just paid the last one,
Okay, so that's the last payment.
police equipment and seeded.
So a year from now, that 5-year contract will expire, and then I'll be in negotiations with probably utility and Taser to research our next options for body cameras. I don't know if they're gonna be as much or less than the roughly 16 we pay a year now, but I'll have a better idea probably third quarter of this year. I've already been in contact with Taser. Taser's sending me a new body camera that they just came out with that I'm gonna T&E on our midnight shift. I'm hoping it comes in a little bit cheaper than the current ones we're using. And then again, it may push utility, our current vendor, to maybe tighten their pricing a little bit if we stay with utility. So whatever we do, we'll probably have to enter into our 5-year contract. We have to keep body cameras. But yeah, I would pencil in, and that's what I did for each of the next 5 years. I just penciled in $16,000 a year for body cameras. And I'll have a better idea this year.
But we really can take it out of the capital plan as long as we have the operational, line reserved for it.
Yep, as long as we're paying for it somewhere else. So, for 2024, that's all we have out there. We get that squad car payment out there for 20,000. You got the additional $4,000, for that additional lease payments on that Durango. As we move into 2025, you have 20,000 for the last payment. That'd be year 5 on those 2020 vehicles. Both of those will be paid off next year. I think that's through, what is it, Wood Forest Bank or something like that. I think that's what it is. So you have 20,000 of them.
And then, I'm sorry, it's 20,000 total, or it's 20 per vehicle?
A total.
Okay.
Yep, it's like 9,000 something per vehicle.
Per year.
Yeah, per year. It comes out to like 19,000 something. So there's a total of 20,000 for both of those vehicles, 2025. Then next year, you'll have 12 lease payments on the Durango that we just got. That'll be year 2 of the 3-year lease. There's 12,000 there you need. We're going to be approaching the council, the latter part of this year to enter into another lease for a 2025 Durango. Trading in one of the 2016 vehicles towards that Durango. So I'm anticipating another $12,000 there. Will probably be less than that because we'll have a trade, but I'm just going on the high side to be safe. And then the 16,000 for body camera, you don't have to figure that in as long as you have it somewhere else. So you'll have $44,000 in 2025 for police. Then 2026, you'll have 12,000 for year 3 of the 2024 Durango, 12,000 for year 2 on the 2025 Durango, 10,000 for ATV replacement, and then that's it for a total of $34,000 that year. And then 2027, you have $34,000 for the lease purchase of the 24 Durango. So we're gonna propose that we, as long as there's no major mechanical issues or anything with that Durango, we would propose to the council that we buy the lease out and then we would own the vehicle for $34,000 in 2027. You'll have $12,000 in lease payments for the second Durango. And then that's it for that year because the police cameras are already out. Then 2028, we would propose buying the 2025 Durango again, if no major mechanical problems, at $34,000. $15,000 for lease first year on a new 2028 vehicle. That would be replacing one of our 2016 vehicles. Then 12,000 for ATV replacement. And then I did 2029 for you as well, if you wanted it. Sure. 2029, you have $15,000 for year 2 lease on the 2028 vehicle, 15,000 on year 1 lease on the 2029 vehicle, and that's it, so like 30,000. The only thing I did throw in there, and we're working on a grant right now, and I don't know if we're gonna have success on the grant or not. We had to do something with our police boat. It's a 1997. I've been working with a local priest in Beverly Shores who's actually the Coast Guard chaplain. He's trying to help us find a boat. I'd like to figure in somewhere, you know, it could be anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 to get a nice used boat. But I just don't know where to toss it in, Trista, that would work for you. So maybe if you can just pencil in there, if there's a year that we see we're not over on some of our capital, of penciling in like, I don't know, $100,000 for a new police boat. Hoping to have a grant by then. It doesn't have to be until 2026, 2027 type thing. You know, I may find some help through a grant prior to that. But other than that, that's the only thing on the police department's wish list, is our boat is aging, so.
I'm still looking for a money tree.
I know, and the helicopter is not on this request. On the police side, that's all I have.
The Port County Sheriff has a helicopter, don't they?
No,
Oh, they don't?
Lake County.
Lake's closest,
Yeah, Lake County will come out and help us. We just
just
got,
like Joe had one?
Lake County's the only one. So,
Really?
and state police, we can request state police.
Right.
State police will send us one as well. That's all I have on police, unless anybody has any questions. Fire, that one I would have to defer to John Wall for fire.
It looks like you're fine with what you've got on there from what I can see. Looks like your public safety, I'm starting on the left columns again. You know, you've got some public safety building additional expenditures. I think those must have been things you've already paid.
You got another 310, which is essentially the first additional money that was put on the 2.9 contract to get it to 3.1. I think we're at 3.175 right now, so. I think your projected expenditures for 24 are in line. That interest number, I'm not exactly sure if that 138 is correct. I'm assuming it is.
Yeah.
The fire truck financing, you're in good shape there with what you projected out. I think we talked about getting that second truck in 26, which would mean it would have to be ordered in 24. So if we're serious about, if we think we can afford this budget as you projected, because it's a 2-year lead time, we're going to take delivery on that one we ordered 2 years ago in 25. It would be good to think about trying to get one ordered in 24 if we think we can afford what you projected here for the second truck, which I would encourage you to do. The only question I have, Trista, on your interest in building corporation bond proceeded as you project out past 26, the original intent was to pay interest only for the first 3 years because the bonds that we have on the GO bonds for the lakefront improvements were going to be retired by 27. Aren't we going to have to project interest and principal for 27, 28?
No, because then the property tax collections will come in to pay that directly. So that really, we could list that in the capital plan, but because the property tax comes in specifically to pay it, it really wouldn't be something on here to worry about shuffling around.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I'm with Mark on the subject. That's a wild card, and hopefully we'll know something soon. But I don't know whether you want to keep that up there where you had it or what.
Yeah, I would.
Well, because the reference to septic really is only the public safety building, I will move that down to the fire section so that it's a little more evident what it relates to as opposed to a town hall item.
That'd be specific to that building. And the other thing is I would encourage that between you and Meg getting together and looking at some of the things that were recently approved for the public safety building, looking at some of the other outstanding invoices that we have out there, like, we have a Sentinel alarm company, the $1,800 for the fire monitoring and that. Some of those other loose ones that are out there, because as we near closing out the public safety building, I just want to make sure we're certain on, the amount of what we're over on that.
I'm concerned. Meg and I looked for the meeting at change order number 10, which is one behind. And if I'm reading it correctly, the expenses then either planned or completed was up to $3,174,000 and a few dollars, which is really close to 3.2 million, like by $25,000 close.
Yeah, we approved
So then
3.1 something.
Change 11.
We can get 12, but
So I don't know that we're at a spot that's been approved, honestly.
I know,
Sorry. So the last projection that we brought to the council was 147,000, I think. And that included some things like the AV equipment, meaning the Zoom capability, and some other things. That was about 150,000. The fire department was going to cough up like 80 to 90 of that, and the town's responsibility. So Dave has that sheet that was given to the council that has some projections for what we think are going to be the end game for the extras. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm concerned that when are the change orders stopping, I guess really is my question, which is not an accusatory question.
No, I get it. So in order to understand the overall, the 30,000 foot view, as I like to say, you've got that 3.175 or whatever it is. That's essentially the end of the contract change orders, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
But that 145 was still in play because we didn't have type numbers. And that includes things like, and these are council decisions, if they want, so the fire department was going to buy X number of chairs and tables because we need them for our training. If the council decides they want to have capability to put, I forget how many people we said, 60 people in there or something, they're going to want more chairs. So if the council decides to buy more chairs, then that's part of that 145. Included in that 145 that hasn't been expended yet is not, will never be a change order of the contract. It's just an expenditure that the town has hanging out there. So we've tried to bring to the council that 145 as an umbrella number for potential future changes. It won't be contract change orders. You're pretty much done with contract change orders with what you've got in house now.
So number 11 is the last one.
I'm not sure if I get everything yet I don't get everything anymore, so I'm not sure what you're looking at when you say 12. I haven't seen.
That's
But
what you signed,
the
number.
pay application, is that what you're talking about?
I think we'll get,
There's a pay application that just came in that has a definitive top dollar of that 3,175.
I think it's a pay application.
That's a pay application. That's not a change order,
Okay,
just to be clear.
We did we conducted the owner walkthrough this morning with all the various contractors, subcontractors with the superintendent. So there will be, as far as I know, no more change orders coming forward. I mean, they're starting final cleaning this Saturday. They did the punch list items and that. I mean, we're just weeks away from.
That's correct. There's no more unknown change orders coming from the contract. So that 3,175, you can pretty much hang your head on.
okay,
Now, there, again, this 145 that's in play, that includes things like some more furniture, whether or not we do the Zoom improvements in this room and over there to accommodate the town council meetings. If you guys choose to have a meeting over there, the fire department doesn't need it. We don't care whether you do it or not as far as that goes, but that's a decision for the council. And you've got the control over whether you spend those dollars or not. And then the projections were about 145. Including a lot of stuff that the fire department is going to pick up about 80 of. So you're really only talking about a $60,000, $70,000 swing if you choose to buy all this, if you're following.
Like the initial cost on the audio video for the new building, I think it was as high as like 70,000.
Yes.
Paul then stepped in and said, this is way overkill for, what the town needs. We then sent the designers at Advanced Communications back to the drawing board. We should have something this week, next week at the latest, to tell us what we need for new meetings, for both microphone, camera, everything in that room and in this room. We're having them bid this room as well to do better with the Zoom recordings that we have here as well. And then that's a future council decision that we'd have to put, numbers to.
okay, all right.
It's kind of extra contract type of thing if you want to think of it that way. The
Yeah.
contract is pretty much,
That makes me feel better. I thought there were more change orders coming yet and I was no concern.
So the numbers aren't in here yet for that wish list of things, so those numbers should at some point be put in here for.
if you decide to do that.
Right, we have to decide, but it seems like, some of it seems like it would be.
It's no different than the department heads coming to you with a wish list. It's almost like you guys control your own wish list. You do whatever you want.
Right, but that needs to be put in there some.
Yes.
This is just for the bill.
No, I know that. I'm not objecting that, I thought you said for clarification.
Just right, these are separate. Right.
I do want to caution you about one thing, and it's very extraneous as far as this discussion, but we're meeting with the two adjacent homeowners in about 2 weeks or something, in a week and a half, to talk about whether or not they want to try to have us do more screening of the building. Really, if you take a walk out there, it's really not objectionable as far as I'm concerned. We may offer to buy some trees or something, I don't know, but that's not going to be a big hit. I just want you to be aware that that's the last, I'm not going to call that a contract item because it's essentially us trying to keep the neighbors happy more or less. But that's the only other risky sort of thing out there as far as I'm concerned with the building, unless Mark, you get something.
Maybe we talk to Zach now about staff and meetings.
I'm sorry about the book. Oh.
I mean, the only other things I could think of that were kind of hanging out there that I made note of was, we talked about the septic, the lakeshore driving, was a large one. We've got that. That could be handled in 26, 27 in the CCMG. And then the only other pending thing, obviously not going into detail, is we've just got that lawsuit that's been brought up before about, do we figure in that amount, as a worst case scenario or not? Other than that, those are the only things that have been brought to my attention as far as that I have left, on my desk that we need to address in the future. Otherwise, again, I said this at our last meeting, it's kind of unprecedented that, for a small town, very vibrant town, we've got 3 major projects going on at the same time. All 3 will be coming to completion by June 1st, except for the septic. I don't anticipate any construction on that septic probably to the fall of this year. just for the mere fact, by the time we get it designed out to bid, get a contractor that is awarded the bid, we don't want to do any construction out in the park in July, because that's, a busy time here. I wouldn't see us breaking ground on any type of septic work probably to late August, September, October this year.
So does that mean no workable bathrooms in the building?
That's correct. And we'll be addressing that at the building commission meeting next Friday in front of the building commission. So. Yep. But otherwise, the building itself is, today's walkthrough went well. It's a very beautiful facility, turned out well.
Yeah, and I'm just thankful that everybody has done everything that they've done to get us to the point where we're at. We've been told by the building commissioner that we will be able to occupy the building with a conditional building permit. When you look through the, occupancy permit, we have a building permit, but we will be able to occupy the building. So the intent right now, just in terms of, this is just information more, sorry, it's not really anything to do with budget, but the intent right now is the building will be cleaned starting this Saturday by the contractor. That'll complete in about a week and a half. We have moved in our SCBA compressors and some of the other really important equipment. So we're in a position probably within about 3 weeks to be able to move the trucks in there and start operating out of that building. And, for our meetings, nobody really uses the bathrooms anyway. So we're going to have some portable restrooms probably on site. And then if you guys decide you need to hold a meeting over there or something, you'll have to decide what you want to do.
Well, and I guess to the benefit of that, which is not the word I want, but you're not a 24-hour department, there's no sleeping there. Where you normally would have a shower or something, or bringing an overnight facility. And can they get in this building? It's right across the driveway, right, to be able to use the restroom?
There's locker rooms, showers, and then public toilets in front as well, so, yeah.
Okay. So that's close by.
Yeah, and also John even told them this morning, all water to all faucets, all toilets, was all.
We've actually shut it off. So we have a holding tank for our floor drains. In the event we have to fill the trucks, we'll turn the water back on, fill the trucks, and then have that holding tank, which will hold the drain water, just a mandate from the county health. So that's all, that system is in place functioning. If we need it, we'll turn the water off. And the fire protection water will remain on anyway, so that's not an issue.
And for the temporary, CFO to get in or to occupy it, I spoke to both the building commissioner and the town attorney today, and it will be on the agenda for the upcoming building commission meeting, at which time the building commission, with input from the town attorney, will discuss it, hold a vote, and then the occupancy permit will be granted from the building commission itself rather than just the commissioner, and that will be discussed on their agenda at the next meeting. So, and Larry's already referred to the ordinance, town ordinance that would allow the, temporary occupancy of that facility. So. Aside from that, I know we covered a lot. I know it's going to take you a while to get everything updated, and then we'll see how the numbers, work out. And then again, if we need to revisit it, we can go back to each department and revisit it. And then hopefully by Monday, our primary goal is for Monday's meeting to be able to advise the council on that CCMG project. Because I'd like to get authorization on Monday to allow Haas enough time that they can prepare the application for the state. So our submittal goes in before the deadline, and then hopefully we're awarded that and then begin construction next year.
Yeah, and looking through the, some of the number edits that you've discussed with us today, I don't see any problem with that moving forward, but I'll certainly get this updated and back to the committee quickly, either tonight or tomorrow. As well as filling in a few more if there are any other expenditures that Meg and I need to add to the column of a few things. Does anybody have any questions on that before I move to something that's kind of related? Okay.
My question, only comment, goes back to Chief, what you said in regard to the 500 is in the absence of having a reserve fund with that amount of money in it, right? And perhaps we evaluate looking at after the first quarter is closed, seeing if we can sweep to a reserve account. And if we're short of 500, reserve some out of the capital fund so that between the two, we have 500, but that's a big number for us not to be putting and evaluating and attacking solutions. We can advise that it needs to be planned for.
I haven't heard any recent, updates on it needs to be planned for, so I am welcome to accept all of that information. And I understand your concern about that, and I definitely think it's something that we should look at and talk further. And maybe I'm speaking a little bit too early without having that additional information, but I don't know that the council needs to plan to set aside $500,000 in 1 year and keep that money tied up. Unless there is something more specific, again, that I don't know about, of it being an immediate full payment. Typically with a lawsuit, there's gonna be a lot of negotiation and hearings and things coming forward, so we're gonna have some lead time. As well, I typically wouldn't expect that any kind of settlement reached or final judge's order reached would demand immediate full payment, as opposed to something that could be negotiated over a 2, 3, 4, 5 year time period. So again, there might be more information that I don't have. But I would be surprised if it became something where we owe $500,000 in the next 60 days kind of thing.
Understood. I just think as we're looking at a 5-year view, and this is a substantial amount of money, that it needs to be put somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
It balances out if we can start putting in the reserve, into the reserve fund, the rainy day fund.
Mhm.
Operational budget as the year evolves.
Sure.
I think we have to put it on paper.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, additional appropriation is a particular, process whereby when you have a cash balance in a fund that is not planned in that year's budget, and you have some expenses coming, forward that you know about that need to use that cash balance, it's an ordinance the council has to pass. There are 2 readings on it typically. The second reading is a public hearing, just like you do with your budget, that the public can come in and comment if they want to. Some of these capital plan items use some of the cash balance reserved in the funds. We've talked about that when we've looked at the fund projections. For example, I think the Riverboat Fund has, and I'll double check that, but has $100,000, for example, as part of the cash balance that we have applied toward this revenue in the capital plan. It is not yet in the budget plan. And so as these numbers now today were better solidified and reviewed, I would prepare an ordinance for your upcoming council meeting to make sure that any of the cash balances that are needed toward these capital items are included on that ordinance. If it turns out that you don't end up spending it all, great, it just sits there and it stays where it is. But that way it's in place and available for use as these projects are getting finished. And you're ready to send checks out on some of those things. So as that gets prepared and a copy gets in the agenda, certainly can answer any more questions about that if you're curious. But I do think if when you look at that and you look back at the fund projections that you have, you'll see at the bottom that purple colored cash balance. It should all tie out for the previous copy that you have. So
on that additional expenditure, should we include the donation fund if I'm going to be spending like that $5,000 check that we just received for the donation? I'm gonna be, at least I know, spending that and more. And I have a balance, a reserve in our donation fund.
Okay.
We have some items this year that we may want to tackle out of that account. In whole, I'm hoping to have $8,000 coming in through this fundraising event. So there would be 8,000 in expenditures there. And then probably an additional 5,000 out of the already remaining balance we have in there. So, you know, that's a total of 13,000.
Okay.
Maybe while you're doing this, should you add that
Yes, please.
in there?
The budget that we listed, again, at the time of the budget planning, didn't have a lot of revenue, right? And then all this was developed.
Right.
So the budget said you could spend 200. So if you have that coming in, yes, I'd like to do that one time, justification fee,
Yep.
and then it's all included.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Anything else?
No, I just thought of that as
About
we
that.
were discussing that, so that we don't have to revisit it. Thank you.
I think the only other thing I have for today is to maybe think ahead about that budget schedule. Like unless you have something else to talk about. It would be nice to start to meet with the department heads in June. May might be a little early.
During the capital discussion, I already started our 2025 budget discussion, so it's both Greg and Tom will go pretty quick. We're already, we know a few areas we want to address, same thing on the police side. I think it'll go as smooth as even smoother than I did last year, so.
So I think again, maybe just a reminder right now, check your schedules, see what you think can work in June. For probably an afternoonish, meaning 3 or 4 hours worth of time. You could divide it into 2. It can be in an evening, it could be in the morning. The time of day doesn't matter. It was just point being to reserve, about that much of a chunk to meet with the departments and committees, get their requests in. So they need some time to plan that as well. And then there will be probably, I would say, 2 to 3 more budget finance committee meetings, to go through those requests. We'll put in a spreadsheet. You can see how it balances. You can see if, the initial requests will be met by the revenues, or if you need to cut somewhere or not. We'll prepare revenue predictions for you. The goal being to ideally approve a budget in September meeting as the second reading, the first budget reading having been in August. That allows you then, so that would be from a June department head type meeting until August. You have about 2 months to work through, massage, review. Having the plan, second reading and vote on the budget in September does allow you that October meeting as emergency backup, because it has to be approved by the end of the month, November 1st, technically. So I prefer to schedule it that way on plan and have that safety outlet, as opposed to planning September, October council meetings on the budget, and then all of a sudden running into a problem and you're out of time. So maybe think about vacations and that kind of thing from between June and August, and maybe at the May Budget Finance Committee meeting, you can set out some dates for what will work for those. We will have updated financials for you for Monday's meeting based on March month-end balance reconciliations. So you'll have those for review. I think that's all I have.
Any other questions, anybody?
Nicely done, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Krista. All right, we will be done at 2:47 PM. Adjourned. Motion to adjourn? Anita, seconded, Laurel, all in favor? Okay, thanks.